Are you ready for a reboot? Welcome to the Sheila Mack Show, reality at its finest. History reminds us those hit hardest often become the change makers. This year, we've all hit crazy economic, social, and emotional rock bottoms. We all get knocked down. Something hits globally, locally, personally. It affects our health, finances, our relationships. We have to recreate a business or career. Each show, Sheila and her special guest will be sharing their reboot stories, guiding you with real solutions to upgrade and up-level emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually, and financially.
Welcome to the Sheila Mack Show, reality at its finest. Here we have real people sharing real stories and actionable steps to help you reinvent, rebuild, and reboot your business and personal life on your terms. I'm your host, Sheila Mack, and today we have special guest, Eva Wisnick. She is a career expert and corporate recruiter for America's most prestigious firms. She has over 25 years of experience in the industry and has made millions of dollars placing top talent into financial institutions, law firms, and consulting companies. She's made it her life's mission to study what it really takes to achieve success and to feel fulfilled. She is her very job mentor. All right. Well, welcome to the show, Eva.
Thank you. Thank you, Sheila.
And I'd like to start off by asking you if you could share a time in your business or personal life where you hit a tough situation and how you got back on track.
Yeah, well, the first thing that comes to mind is 2009. At that point, I had been in business for a good 15 years or so, and things were going really well. I had grown the business from, established it from nothing and grown it into a successful placement agency in New York City that focuses on big law firms. Mm-hmm. And then law firms got hit a little later than 2008, didn't hit till the summer. And then one day, literally, the phone just stopped ringing. Mm-hmm. And that was really hard after having built up a business.
Yes. And how did you get back on track after that situation?
Well, it definitely took a little bit of time. And then when things started coming back, the phone started ringing, clients came back. That was good. It came back slowly. But I also made a few decisions at that point, one of which was that I never wanted to feel that vulnerable again. Mm-hmm. And so my husband, who owns his own legal practice and was also hit at the same time, we decided to start investing in some real estate so that we could diversify. I started doing some Tony Robbins work so I can learn how to manage my mind, which is probably the most important thing all of us have to do. So we kind of took it as a wake-up call that even if you have great business, things can change. And that has really come full circle during the pandemic. And that lesson, I'm glad I learned it then. It was really helpful in last year.
Definitely. Yes, things changed in an instant. In fact, I don't know if you were at the Tony Robbins birthday fundraiser event. I went, that was our last event. My daughter and I attended, and then we were going to go to UPW San Jose. And before you know it, the event got canceled and that was the end of our travels. I know. Really, we haven't been able to do much, just some local, so it is definitely interesting. And thank goodness we have also done a lot of work to prepare and have diversification. Now, for your real estate, how did that affect your real estate? Were you able to still receive rents?
Or So what we did is after the economy started to recover, that's when we bought the properties. So we kind of went to the low point. So, and
then with COVID, did that affect your rents or?
No, it didn't. We were very lucky. Well, we actually diversified in the kind of properties we bought. One is a 4-family house at the Jersey Shore. Mm-hmm. And very fortunately, our tenants have all been able to pay their rent and have stayed employed on and off. Some of them, I think, have had to collect unemployment when their restaurant jobs shut down. In Manhattan, we bought our office. So that's where we work. So that's a little harder because I haven't been in my office in 11 months. So I'm not using it. My husband is, but I still have to pay my mortgage. Mm-hmm. So they're just very different properties, but we've been very fortunate that the rentals have not been hit at all.
Yes, that is very good. Yes, definitely.
Well, it was not to be dependent on one stream of income, and because that's, you don't know it till you get hit, and when you get hit, and all of a sudden that gets turned off, you realize that you need to have diversification.
Definitely. It's so important. And I want to hear more about the fairy job mentor. How does that work?
Yeah. So again, I call my COVID project. When in 2009, when the economy and my business got hit, I went into a bit of a funk because I felt so out of control. But this time, having done all the work that I did, learning how to manage my mind, learning how to focus internally, when I realized in July that we weren't going back to work very soon, I said, well, what can I do that's going to be productive? Where can I really add value? And I have 3 kids, but 2 of them got yanked out of their college experiences, came home in March. They were
Mhm.
actually both studying in Madrid, Spain. They were going to an American university there. And I saw them and their friends really, struggling with all the uncertainty. I think we all were, but I just felt so badly for these kids because that's not what their college experience was supposed to be like. So again, I had this moment where I thought, I need to help them. And in the back of my mind, I always thought maybe I would write a book, but it didn't make sense when I was super busy and, time is money and all that stuff. But I
Right.
had a little bit of extra time this summer. So I started writing a book, and it's very specifically geared for 19 to 24-year-olds
Mm.
because they're in college, coming out of college. And truth be told, Sheila, they're inheriting a pretty crappy world, with everything that's going on. And I thought, let me share some tools that I wish I knew when I was that age that
Mhm.
could help them feel in control and be proactive, whether it's networking, finding mentors, identifying even their own skills and their strengths so they could feel a sense of control in the midst of all this uncertainty. So that's what your fairy job mentor is.
Oh, I love that. That is so important. And I have 6 children. I adopted 3. 3 are mine. They're all mine. And I'll tell you, it is very difficult. I have a couple home with me doing online college, and they had to go get jobs simply because they were going stir crazy at home.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
that was it. And I think one of the things, like for my daughter, she's in for a longer haul because she's working towards psychology, her psychology degree. And she already was able to work as a counselor at a girls' home with pregnant teens and their babies for the last 3.5 years. And that experience was interesting because if you're listening in and you're whatever age you are, she didn't listen to the job ad. It was basically you had to have a bachelor's, and she didn't quite have the bachelor's just yet when she applied. Her friend already worked there, and she started volunteering, and somebody else dropped out. The next thing you know, she was hired, and they weren't sure. They told her, hey, you're kind of young and we're not sure if you can last. It's a tough situation. These are, kind of hardcore kids. And she outlasted most of the management there. And so, and so that was really like, don't listen to the limiting beliefs or even what the story is. If you can volunteer, even you get your foot in the door, they see who you are. They saw how she could work with these kids. And she had training with Chloe Madonis. We did a mentorship program with Chloe when she offered it for 6 months. And so she had a lot of training and traveled with me in the Tony group for 2 years. And so she has a lot of, I
Yes.
guess for a young girl, she had a lot already of experience, but that's something that really helps. What would you say about tips for getting your foot in the door when you
Yeah.
don't have a job at that age?
Well, I think what I do in the book and what I really believe is we have to shatter all these lies. That's what I call them. So whether it's not having experience,
Mhm.
it's a skill set and it's motivation. I mean, you and I know, Sheila, that if somebody's highly motivated and they have very basic but raw skills, whether it's client service, if they've been a waitress or they've been a babysitter, or they can write or they can use a computer. So I
Mhm.
think it's getting over that, but I think underneath it, it's courage, right? Don't ask for permission, ask for forgiveness. And I don't mean being rude. I just mean that,
Right.
if you find a place inside of yourself and have that certainty, people are going to buy that too. And I think that, you don't have courage without fear, right? So
Mhm.
what I try to do, and I spell it in the book, is that whenever you feel that uncomfortable feeling in the pit of your stomach, you're on the right track.
Yes.
Welcome it. That's where all the opportunity lies, right? And I think that that's really hard for all of us. And I think it's particularly hard for young people, especially the Gen Zs. They want certainty, and they want, if I work hard, the next thing's going to happen. And coming out of schools and even the best colleges, people think there's a track. We have to create our own track. So trusting your gut, taking brave action. In the book, I have something where I want them to keep track of not just the results, but their efforts. Like every time you put yourself out there and do something uncomfortable, maybe reach out to somebody on LinkedIn or ask your mother's best friend's cousin if you can have an informational interview, give yourself credit for those things. That's where all the good stuff comes out of. So.
That is so true. And I know it goes back to my own memory of being a young kid. And I got this computer science information certificate at a community college. I was a young mom, a single young mom. And actually, I was forced into marriage. My parents were like, you have to marry this dude. And I did. But anyway, all the kids in the class were way better at math and programming than me. I was there for the money. I wanted the programming job to support this baby. And it was the best paying job at the time. I was the C student. And I was the only student that wasn't afraid to go apply at JPL NASA. And they were like, oh no, you could never, you have to have a degree and you have to be so smart. And I was like, okay, fine, whatever. It's right down the street from my house. And they pay for childcare and insurance. And I knocked on the door and they hired me. And I had different departments. They had like 10,000 employees at the time. Different departments actually fought over who got to have me next. Because I stayed early. I got there early. I stayed late, not really because I loved the job, but because I didn't know how to program that well. So I had to compensate for my inability. Mm-hmm. And that was okay. It was the confidence and the willingness to knock on the door. And obviously that wasn't my life dream. And I got into other things and opened businesses. But that was just, I think when you're a mom and you have a baby and you're like, I will walk on fire. We talk about walking on fire for Tony's group. I will walk on fire for my kids. I will do whatever it takes to make sure they're good. And so that was the courage that it took to get me to do that. Yes.
But I think what's a good thing to kind of dispel for anybody listening is that one day you're going to be ready. We're never ready, and I could tell you that it's so interesting. Because writing the book for me was actually not hard, because I feel like I just was pulling everything I knew, and it was almost felt like I was channeling from the universe. It went really smoothly. I had a wonderful editor I was working with. But now that it's out there, now it gets scary because then you're like, ooh, is anybody going to read it? Is anybody going to buy it? And what's been interesting is I've gotten an amazing reception from the parents, right? Because I know the parents, but they read and they're like, oh my gosh, I wish I knew this. Oh my gosh, this is exactly. But, what's hard is when and I didn't realize this when I wrote the book, that sometimes kids don't even know what they don't know. So they don't know what they need to help them. Right.
Yes.
So it's kind of, you and I could sit here and we can probably share so many stories of those moments when we just took a risk and we trusted our gut and we put ourselves out there. And that's why we are where we are today. Right. Mm-hmm. But it's, it's trying to get it to, that market that I think so much needs it. I have to tell you, look, I'm a little bit more, I'm back in my uncomfortable zone. But again, I think that that's a good place to be. The more you're there, and it doesn't end. It doesn't matter whether you're 20 or 50 something, right? Mm-hmm. There's always gonna be moments where you're like, what do I do now? But it's overcoming the uncomfortableness and seeing it as every time I've been in that space, amazing things happen because that's where all the opportunity lies. It doesn't lie in sitting on a couch and being comfortable.
Yes. And I mean, just imagine those listening in, if you have students in your life, or I would imagine maybe you're re-entering the work world. This book would also apply for that. Maybe you're a mom or something shifted and now you're going back to work because of this very interesting universal pause. And so I think there's probably tips in there for a lot of different groups. And for students, especially, this could save so much time and effort.
And suffering. People suffer. What they do is they get stuck in their heads, because I've been doing a lot of focus groups and talking quite a bit to my my children's friends. And actually, I finally took my first plane ride. I went to LA because my son just started college there and I couldn't bring him out there in January when he finally was able to go out. He started his classes online in September, and I was able to see outdoors in warm sunshine one of my daughter's friends, and she said, "Well, I don't even know where to start because I don't know what I want to do." And what happens is all of us, when we don't have clarity, sometimes we get so stuck and our brain goes into this cycle where we're like, well, I don't know what to do because I don't know what I want. And if I ask people and they're going to ask, and it kind of, that downward cycle where you just have to kind of break out of it and say, let me just talk to people. Let me apply for some jobs. Let me see what's out there. I can't possibly have all those answers when I'm at this stage in my life, right? The learning comes from even having jobs that aren't good, right?
Yes, and then you know what you don't want.
Well, I think knowing what you don't want, is part of it. I finally figured it out. It sounds like this for me, Sheila. I want to do as much as I can, spend as much time as I can doing what I love, and as little time as I can not doing what I don't like, and making the most amount of money. It's because it's time and money. And I love helping other people, and I love the career stuff. I memorize people's resumes, but the point is, I think we all have unique talents and gifts. And if we can recognize them and be aware of them and be able to articulate them, then people know what to do with us, right? It starts internal. It's not just external. When people focus just externally, it doesn't work the same way. So.
Yes. And I'm wondering now, what is your idea on volunteer work or to get started, to kind of feel things out? How does that work now, especially with COVID and...
Yeah, well, I love that idea because I think especially if you're somebody who has been out of work or maybe a student trying to get their first job, one of the worst things in the world is sitting home and contemplating that, because what happens is I really think our self-esteem gets eroded when we're not useful. I really believe as humans, we are born to contribute, right? To be able to help people to use our talents. So I think there probably are some places, if you can just look into it a little bit, where you can volunteer. I know that almost every vaccine center is looking for volunteers, and if you volunteer a certain amount of hours, even if you're not in any group that would get a vaccine early, you're going to get it. There's so many places. There are people. I live in a very nice area in Westchester, New York. And then I was driving to a neighboring town, and I saw these people outside, and I thought it was next to a CVS, and I thought they were waiting for some kind of vaccine sign up, and I realized there was a food line.
Oh no!
And I've been seeing these in front of churches in the rain. Obviously, if you're immunocompromised, that might not be the thing to do. But can you imagine if a young person who feels like they're not in such a great situation stands there and gives out food or helps with a vaccine? I think it puts our life into perspective so quickly, right?
Yes. And, I'd like to share really quick. This is something I share on every show, is about 211. And it makes me think of 211, which I don't know if you've heard of it, but the 211 is in every state in the United States and every province in Canada. If you dial 211, or if you Google 211 and your state, 211 New York, California, whatever, you are going to find a list of places just like that where you can get a vaccine, where you can get food on the table, help with your rent or mortgage, jobs, senior care, lots of things, help for veterans, help if there's mental health help. So if somebody's going through something, or maybe you have somebody in your home or that's struggling with abuse, addictions. So that's something I love to share on this show, because I know somebody listening didn't know that. It's that one piece of information that could change their life in an instant and just make it easier to get back on track this year.
That's wonderful. I did not know about that. So thank you for sharing that, Sheila.
So that's really important. Now, is your book already in print and ready to purchase?
Yes. So it's an ebook. So it's on Amazon, and it's called Your Fairy Job Mentors: Secrets for Success. And we are starting to print some copies because aiming at this audience, I was told by them that they don't really read hardcover books. They download everything onto their iPad, their whatever it is, and that's how they read all their books for school. I know my two kids haven't bought one textbook in 2 years, which is unbelievable. I remember back when I went to college, I spent hundreds of dollars in the 80s buying textbooks. But now I'm getting a call for that. So we're going to end up having books available printed. So that's what we're doing. Yeah.
Okay, yes, that's wonderful. And I'd love to maybe if you could share a little bit, some of the tips, maybe from some of the chapters in the book for those listening in.
Yes, I can. So there's one chapter actually on time management,
Mm,
which is something I've taught to 10,000, mostly lawyers, actually.
wow.
That's been my business has been in the legal field. Um, and the tip is do the worst things first. Do the worst things first. So when you wake up in the morning and you need to call somebody and follow up on something you sent them, or you need to work on a project that just think, oh, I don't like doing that, or it's uncomfortable, or I don't have the skills, do the worst things first. Another tip I have is, and it maybe sounds connected, but when it comes to, like, let's say you're actively looking for a job, just take one brave action a day. Don't overwhelm yourself. One brave action, and then like give yourself a high five, do a little dance, reward yourself for whatever that looks like. But let's talk about what the difference between a brave action and action is. Just sending out tons of resumes over the internet, it's not a brave action. That's like action without like doing.
Mhm.
Literally going on LinkedIn or Facebook and maybe finding one person that is connected to that company or that industry, and sending it directly to them and possibly following up with them. That's a brave action. We know the difference. We like to fool ourselves sometimes, but I think it all lies in putting yourself out there in that way. I think that to start with in chapter 1, and I talk about like the power of self-knowledge, but really getting a handle on your skills. And I think that there are so many even online places you could just do a skills assessment.
Yeah.
And the other thing I think is so important is understanding your values, your work values. When I place people, and I've placed thousands of people, I've hired thousands of people when I
Mhm.
work inside of investment banks and law firms, they're not all the same. When I worked at Lehman Brothers, it was my second job out of college in 1986. It was the Wolf of Wall Street. It literally was. I mean, the amount of stuff going on around me, I didn't think I was that naive, but it was really a difficult environment for me. And I realized that my values clashed. I thought people should be respectful, and I thought people should behave a certain way or make decisions certain ways, or maybe not be having affairs all over the place, whatever those things were. But
Right.
knowing what your values are, what are your must in the work environment? And I
Mhm.
think those things we have knowledge of, even if you haven't worked much. Why did you like that teacher? Why did you like that part-time job? Why were you excited to go to that person's home to mow their lawn? Like, what was it about that? And
Mhm.
I think, especially at this time, it's so important for us to focus on things we do have control over, right? So, I mean, especially when we're feeling all this outside stuff. So those are some of the tips. There's tons and tons of other ones in the book. So basically the book comes down to two things. One is the how to's, like, how do I interview? How do I do an informational interview? And that in some ways I think is the easy part. The hard part is the managing our mind part, right? Which
Mhm.
you and I have been through a lot of Tony work, but our mind is there. It's a troublemaker, difficult mind. It's looking for trouble. It's looking for what's wrong. I mean, every day when I want to do something, there's a part of me that says, oh, that's going to be a really stupid idea. Or like, who do you think you were writing this book? What makes you think you're good enough, right? We all have that inner critic. We need to shut that inner critic down and manage our minds. Otherwise, our actions become blocked, right?
Yes, I
What do
think
you
that's so important. I really do. And the thing about making sure that you're aligned with the values, sometimes you will go take a job, especially when you're younger. You accept a job, you're so happy, and it's the field you love finally, and then the values clash, like you were saying. And what advice would you give to maybe if you have to move out of that? I would say move out of that as soon as you can.
I do too.
Yes, except for it's hard because then it looks like, well, why did you leave this job so soon?
That's a great question. I was coaching somebody today for an interview that she has tomorrow that I'm representing her to. And the way you do it is that you always put in the positive. I've learned so much and I'm so grateful for this opportunity. Let's say you had a boss that's a total micromanager, and it makes you feel like, it doesn't make you feel like good about what you're doing because you're not able to really add value in the way that you like. Um, So I wouldn't say, oh, I had this horrible micromanager boss, but I would say, I've learned so much. And one of the things that was great is I learned how to be extremely detail oriented. And I definitely feel confident in that. But what I'm looking for at this point is a place that will allow me to be a little bit more creative and bring these other skills. So you paint the picture of what you want to bring, but you don't over explain. And I have to tell you, it's such a no-no to be trashing any place you've ever worked, because it just sends alarms out to other people. So practicing how to put it in a very sincere and authentic way and a positive is really helpful. And then chalking some of that up to, like, wow, note to self, ask these questions beforehand. So the challenge is, and I think even if we were experienced professionals, that we don't know what our key values are until they're challenged. What that looks like is that you assume that if you're changing fields, getting promoted, but it's the same kind of professional place, like for me, when I went from one law firm to another, I just assumed that they would operate the same way. And I was shocked to find that they didn't, and that it was a values clash for me. But I didn't know it was going to be missing until I hit it. And then it's like getting stabbed in the chest. I mean, it's so painful when you're in that environment. But when you're young, I think it's important that you see these things as like learning opportunities. Say, okay, note to self, this doesn't work for me.
And I think it's the Tony Robbins saying you're the direct reflection of your peer group. And when you're working 8 hours a day somewhere, that becomes your peer group, whether you like it or not. That's who you're spending your time with. And if the values are clashing and you don't want to go down that road, it is best to move on, even in a time like this.
I agree. But Sheila, what you bring up is great. So the peer group. So another one of the big, I call them the big lies that I like to shatter, is that you have to know people in very powerful places to get a job, right? And that's not true. I mean, obviously, your peers when you're coming out of college can't necessarily hire you, but they might know about opportunities. But within a very fast few years, by the time you hit 25 to 30, your peers are going to become even more connected and know about opportunities. So if you worked on a project with somebody in school, or were on the same team with them, and you really felt like this was a really fair, decent person, I would ask them about the companies that they've encountered that they felt good about, right? So what I'm saying is our peers are so important. And I think we ignore that. We know people sometimes that can be extremely helpful, including family members, right? Like, I have to tell you, I'm shocked. I met my son's roommate in college. We went to an outdoor place in LA, and he was the nicest kid. Turns out he has a house right near where our beach house is. And I asked him, we were talking about what parents do, and he didn't know his mom did. And it's so interesting. I say this not to be critical, but I can't tell you how often I meet young people and they don't know what their parents do for a living.
That's interesting.
I just bring that up because, like, I think if we could have those kinds of conversations as parents, and not just what the job title is or that they're an engineer, but what do you do every day and why did you choose that company? I think we could be so helpful to our children if we have those kinds of conversations, including telling them about our early failures. It's very rare that somebody graduates from college, lands a job, and is there for the next 10, 15, 20 years. Most of us had a couple of rough starts, right? And our kids need to hear that, because I think, unfortunately, they're putting so much pressure on themselves. They expect themselves to be perfect in the beginning, right?
Right. And I don't even know if young people today want to stay in a career for so many years, or if the careers will be there for so many years, because things shift so quickly now. It's not as dependable. It's not like it was. A lot of times you have to diversify. You have to have other income coming in from somewhere, and surprises happen. Like this last year was the biggest I've ever had with COVID. But it's one of those things where I think there's a different set of values that has happened now, where most of my 6 beautiful young children, they want to, now they're adults. They've graduated. I have one in college, one that's part-time college, getting another degree, but already works full-time. And, they really value family time, their relationships, other parts of their life. And they take 100%, they care about what they do for work.
Sure.
but they want to make sure that they have a lot of freedom. And I think it's even more important now that we've lost so much freedom.
Yeah,
So,
no, I think those are all great points. They're saying that the Gen Zs, which were born after 2001, I have two of them, and I have one millennial. I've seen this in my own family. It is, we don't want to overgeneralize, that they like the certainty more. So it'll be interesting to see. They supposedly find they look more like the baby boomers than they do the next generations in terms of, and some of that is because they watched their parents to go through so much uncertainty, including the 2008, 2009 financial crises. So just, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
yes, I'm wondering with COVID, how that's changing, because we want certainty now because it's so uncertain.
That's exactly
more
right.
than ever. I know that for my kids, they care far more about, it's not like they never cared, but they really are interested in politics.
Yes.
They're interested in how they can make a difference and be the change in the world and all this. And before it was like, that's nice, I'm going to school right now, I'll check it out when I'm older, And
well, I love that. And I have to tell you, for me, I mean, I get goosebumps because part of the reason, again, that I really took the time out to write this book is because watching them in this summer with everything that was going on in terms of the racial distress, all the stuff that was happening, Black Lives Matter and everything else, I actually think they're going to change the world. I do. I want to believe it. I want to give them every tool in the book because I think they woke up and they're saying, whoa, what's happening to our environment? What's happening to our world? What's happened to our democracy? And I think that I think they also kind of got the secret that just because people are older than them, they don't know that doesn't mean they know what they're doing, right? I mean, honestly.
Sure.
So I think that I just hope they kind of go run with that, right? That if we don't like some of the things that are happening, whether it's gun control, and I don't think they're rebels. I think they want to be change agents, right?
Yes.
I'm excited for them. I'm such a big fan of this next generation. Such a big fan.
Now, I know for me as a young adult, I really got into politics because of my children. I had the children young, and one of them had some special needs, hearing problems and this and that. And I got into working for equal education for all because I realized, wait a minute, not everybody has the same options in this education system. What's happening? And before now this is funny because it's based on careers. I'm bringing this up for careers. I was volunteering because I wanted the best for my child.
Right.
I fostered kids. Some of them had issues and some of my own had issues. And so I was like, hey, I want to be able to make sure all kids have what they need. What's going on here? And I got hired in politics and they asked me, what's your political affiliation? I said, at the time I was still in my early 20s, I said, free spirit. I mean, I knew nothing. All I knew was I care about these kids, but I was hired to run campaigns and do things. I mean, I didn't even know, but I was good with people. Sometimes you don't know what you're good with. Yes. I was good with leading events and keeping people happy and getting them to get the vote out and do whatever they needed to do. I didn't know what they were doing politically.
Right.
But I knew that.
You were using your skills and then your values were at play. And I think that's a great example because I think people get so caught up in what company, what job. No, skills and values. I'm telling you, you get the skills and values match and you could be working for like a company that you've never heard of or an industry that is new. So I think that's right. So, yes, I'm super excited about this. I'm really, really excited about giving them tools, having run a very successful business and having, made some decisions, my husband and I, where we feel like, we're going to be fine. We'll probably be able to retire in the next 10 years and our kids are about to graduate college in the next 2 years. But it's about giving back, as Tony says, there comes a place where you just want to contribute. And that's another thing that I talk to these kids about, like the certainty thing, the more we can become comfortable with uncertainty, the greater our lives become, right? It's, because certainty is a box. And certainty, that being driven by certainty is a limiting thing over time. And I'm trying to teach them how to, even connect to their gut. They're so, that's a whole nother thing, right? But and then when you feel something really strongly, go do it.
Yes. Listen to that gut. I'm telling you, my gut is so spot on. It is 99.9% of the time. It is right on time and perfect. As long as I listen to it. And over the years, I have learned to listen. And my daughter will be the same way, and my sons, but I mean, my daughter for some reason more. And it'll be like, she said, Mom, we've got to go see everybody now because I don't know. I just feel like I've got to see everybody. And that's why we ended up at the Tony birthday party. And we had lost my youngest son. He passed away of a heart condition, Wolff Parkinson White. And so a lot of people knew about that in the group. But that was December 21st, 2019. And so that was our first outing after that. And she had moved home with me. And then she wanted to go visit everyone. And she said, we have to go now because I feel like I'm not going to be able to see everybody. And I was like, what are you talking? We go every month. We do events. I help with all these people. I work there. We fly back and forth. We have a couple different states I'm in. And she was like, I just got to go now. And she was right, because that if we didn't go that week, we would have missed seeing everybody for about 3 or 4 months at least with the lockdowns.
I hear you. I had the same thing. I called my kids up. I was in DC on Monday, March 9th. And I said to them, you need to get a plane ticket and be here by Thursday. You need to get on a plane and come home. You can go back to school in a couple of weeks. And Friday, they start shut down like flights from Europe. So but the point is, I think we all have that connection to our gut, but we've been trained to only trust our brain, like this problem solving brain. And a brain is great if you want to do math problems or code computers or maybe solve it. But our gut is so damn smart. And we've cut it off, So I think as a young person, if you could just even start to test it a little bit and say, because I ask young people when I'm interviewing, like, well, what's your gut? And they look at me like, I'm not sure what you're talking about. I think we all have it. And maybe even, again, if there are parents listening, ask your kids that, instead of telling them what to do, say, well, what does your gut say? Right? That's how I talk to my kids. I really do. Like, well, what does your gut say? Because the more you elicit it, the more connected you become. And then you learn to really trust it. And, as much as, we love our kids so much, but we want them to be able to make those kinds of important decisions on their own, right? And look, during COVID, there have been hard times. When my kids lived at home and many of their kids' friends were home from school, their high school friends, we did not ban them from seeing people. We tried to put some caution around. In the beginning, they would see people, they would park and back up their cars and sit and tailgate and stuff like that. But, there was such a balance for a 19, 20-year-old between keeping them safe and keeping them mentally okay, right? So luckily, to date, none of us have gotten COVID. But, so it's, again, but I say to them sometimes, I've always said to them, like, well, what do you think? Or do you want to talk about this rather than no, absolutely no? And the reason I bring that up is that translates to careers, because then one day your kid is 23 years old, they graduate from college, and how are they supposed to figure that stuff out when they haven't had that connection at all, right?
Right. Yes. And that work experience, if you can even do some little thing like volunteer for 211 from home.
I agree. Feel valuable.
Yes. And then I don't know, there was something about it for my kids, the ones that were stuck home, that they were like, I can't take it anymore. I have got it. They're doing straight A's now. They're so bored, and, 12, 18 units, extra units, and they needed the social interaction.
They do. It's so important for their mental health and for not feeling isolated. I completely agree with that. So I think brave action, if you feel uncomfortable, you're on the right track. And I don't mean wrong. I mean uncomfortable in terms of that it feels like it's out of your comfort zone. And don't believe the big lies that there are no jobs out there. There are jobs out there. People need help. Are you going to get your dream job right out of college in the middle of a pandemic, or if you've been out of work for a little bit? Maybe not. But I believe we have more opportunities than talent. And so putting yourself out there really, really works.
Yes. And I'd love for you to share one more time, now that we're at the end of our talk time, if you could share where people could reach you and get the book.
Sure. So my website, yourfairyjobmentor.com, has all the information. We are going to be launching a podcast towards the end of March, along with the book. You can get the book there. There's a button for Amazon, or you can just go directly to Amazon, and it's on Kindle, and it's yourfairyjobmentor.com. And I am Eva Wisnick.
All right. Thank you, Eva.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Stay tuned. We'll be back after these messages. If you are just tuning in, this is the Sheila Mack Show on NBC's KCAA Radio, the station that leaves no listener behind. And today, I'd like to share with you a chapter in my new best-selling book, Bootstraps and Bra Straps, the formula to go from rock bottom back into action in any situation. So take a listen. Chapter 6. Working Hard for the Money. Careers. I've gone to the same woman's spa since I was 18 years old. I first saw this oasis called Sheila's Spa in a magazine my dear friend Julie gave me when I was in a holding placement camp awaiting my emancipation hearing. That story to come too. Before I'd ever heard about vision boards, I cut out that article and put it on the wall over my bed. I told myself one day I know I'll go to Sheila's Spa. It even has my name on it. By the time I was 18 years old, I was working at JPL and starting to sell things at the swap meet on the side. Finally, I was able to afford to go on my first trip to Sheila's Spa, although the owner Sheila Clough renamed the spa the Oaks at Ojai. Every single year since, often 2 or 3 times a year, I would stay at the spa, sometimes for a month or more. When I first started going, I could only manage to pay for a 3-day weekend pass. I worked from the spa, running my business and enjoying the retreat. Sometimes I'd help out with a couple of classes or with a program as my way to give back. I came to know all those beautiful ladies from around the world. It was a woman's community, a safe place to just relax and connect. This was truly my second family, and I have so much gratitude for the Clough family and all the people who helped create the spa environment I called my second home. The spa was opened for more than 45 years until it was caught in the Ventura fire and sustained so much damage that they had to permanently close. Until that day, it had been open 24/7. They literally hadn't closed their doors until the fire shut them down. Some of the employees had worked at the spa since it first opened its doors, the only job they'd had for the bulk of their adult lives. It was a beautiful place to work and became like a second home for those employees. And just like that, it disappeared. Everybody in the whole community lost their jobs, not just the spa, but other local businesses that depended on the people the spa attracted from all over the world to stay in their little town. Some of the employees had to relocate, and obviously, this wasn't planned. They all lost their income very suddenly, unexpectedly, and dramatically. They couldn't see it coming or make other plans. After December 2017, all the women working at the spa had to reinvent themselves, start over, and rebuild their lives. From shift to gap. Not all career shifts are as dramatic as the one those women were thrust into, but most women will experience at least one career shift at some point in her life, if only as she moves into or out of the workforce. Different career shifts may occur at different stages of life. Becoming a mom and having to pull back or take time off from the workforce, moving back into a workplace after a considerable amount of time off, where you may be dealing with a lot of changes, or confronting retirement. You may be moving from full-time to part-time, or the other way around, or even going from paid work to volunteer work. Whatever shift you are making, you are unlikely to find an even playing field. Statistically, women get paid less than men. In 2017, the U.S. Census Bureau determined that women working full-time, year-round, earned only 80% of what their male counterparts earned. That's a pretty big gap.
It's better than it was, but we still don't command the same salaries that our husbands, boyfriends, fathers, and brothers do. We're stuck with that. We're changing it, but in the meantime, it's a reality, unfair as it may be. Because the deck is still stacked against us, we women often have to work even harder to support ourselves and our families. In this chapter, we'll look at ways you can close that gap as much as possible, including learning how to find your soul calling, supporting your career with education, volunteering, and being prepared for the multiple career shifts most women go through. What is your soul calling? When you have a change in career, whether it's a conscious choice to work less, a forced choice because your employer is downsizing, or you're making the shift toward retirement, the change is an opportunity to redirect your life and say, now it's going to be on my terms. That is the time to follow your passion, or what I call your soul calling. Figure out the other things you can do. Evaluate your talents to see what you're good at and where you can make money. You might have a passion you want to pursue, even if you made your money in another industry. If you're open to the opportunity, your soul calling can redirect you to something that is so much better than the job you didn't like, that you only did for the money. I'll show you how to determine what your soul calling may be in the activity at the end of this chapter. Everybody has a talent. When you follow your talent and mission to help people, you will experience a kind of pull or draw toward activities that utilize your talent. It's almost like you can't not do it. You keep finding yourself using that talent. It just comes out. You can't keep it locked up in a box. We all wear different hats and work in different careers, but the strong talent that is your driving force is your own. When you're doing it, you could do it for free. Sometimes you are doing it for free because that's how it shows up. You're not going to be able to get away from it. You can pretend. You can try to do something else to make money. Maybe that pays for the moment to pay your bills, but in the long run, you'll be continually drawn to your purpose. That feeling of being drawn towards something means the activity aligns with your core values and your life purpose, the vision of who you are. It's the shoe that fits your foot. When you enjoy what you're doing, you think, they're going to pay me for this? That's awesome. I have a client named Lady whose husband surprised her by asking for a divorce. He came home, said, I'm in love with someone else, and he was done. One day everything was fine, and the next day he was gone, leaving her alone with her 3 kids. She was caught totally off guard. When she came to me to figure out what to do next, we looked at her skills, past experiences, and different options. Lady told me how, when she was a young girl and teenager, she took cake decorating classes, and her cakes won prizes and awards. She made beautifully decorated cakes that looked like famous people or Disney characters. She would sell them to her family and friends who wanted fancy birthday cakes. Sometimes Lady would bake these cakes for free and give them as gifts for the holidays because baking is her passion. Now that's what she does for a living. She followed what seemed like the natural next step and started a cake decorating business. Lady works out of a professional kitchen baking sugar-free, gluten-free cakes for the health-conscious and regular ones for people without dietary restrictions. And the sugar-free ones cost even more than the regular ones. She's super happy, but she had to be resourceful and go back to her own skills. She probably wouldn't do so well designing a house, for example, but she can decorate a cake. After the divorce, Lady didn't have the option of not working. She had kids to take care of and bills to pay. Now she's blessed with being able to finally live her passion. She was able to take back some of her power, to make a choice about what she does instead of letting that situation dictate how her life was going to go. She's in charge of what her career looks like. Back to school. Sometimes you may need to supplement your experience with additional education before you can pursue your dream career. While I was working on the revisions of this book, I took some time off to go out to dinner. The restaurant was pretty empty, so I struck up a conversation with the hostess and waitress, who turned out to be two amazing ladies. Both Stacy and Judy are single moms, raising their children on the wages they earn at the restaurant. Stacy confided that she had her first child when she was a child herself, at the young age of 16. She never graduated high school. Now at 48, she's a mother and grandmother, working 2 jobs and dreaming of someday earning a college degree somehow. When Stacy took her break, we got out a piece of paper and worked through the Boots formula. Thanks to raising kids and helping out in school offices for many years, I had some really good news for Stacy. Just because she dropped out of high school didn't mean she had to start all over in order to get a college degree and find her dream job. The best route for anyone in this situation is to go to the local community college. The counselor there can walk you through ways to take college courses or college-level examination program CLEP tests, which allow you to take exams to earn college credits. They may even be able to help you get both your general education and high school credits at the same time. Most colleges even offer free tutorial centers. It may take a few extra years to catch up, particularly if you can only go part-time while you're working, but each class is a step toward achieving your dreams. Until Stacy and I talked, she thought it would be impossible to ever go to college. She promised to keep in touch and even invited me to her graduation. I'll be there with boots on. What are some things you're not doing because someone told you they're impossible? There are always ways around things, through things, or over things. The most important thing to do is to put your boots on and start taking the first steps. Back to school on a budget. But Sheila, you may be thinking, there's no way I can afford to go back to school, even if that education would help me make more money in the long run. To that I say, how can you afford not to? Judy, the other woman at the restaurant, overheard my conversation with Stacy and confessed she felt like it might be too late to become a flight attendant and travel the world, something she had been dreaming of since she was a little girl. She said that she'd looked into going back to school but was thinking maybe it would be wiser to just take a course in bartending to make more money. I asked Judy, if your daughter told you this is what she'd always wanted to do, yet she could earn an extra $1 an hour doing something that wasn't aligned with her goals, what would you tell her to do? She laughed, but she got serious when I followed up. What is your happiness worth? The secret that most people are not aware of is that if you have lower incomes, are a single parent, and are on a budget, you can get help going back to school. You will most likely qualify for some form of grants and financial aid for books and course materials, as well as class fees at the community college level. This also works for higher education, but unfortunately the fees are higher and there are fewer grants. So higher education degrees may require shopping around at a few colleges to find one that fits your time and financial budget and gets you to the career of your choice. Don't worry so much about the name of the university. The degree and training are the important part. If you end up needing to get a student loan, they are usually deferred at 0 to very low interest while you are enrolled at least in 6 units. Be sure to check this information for your specific college and state before signing for any loans. And please don't take any debt if you don't need to. Be sure to start paying back your loans immediately, even if it's a little each month. You're allowed to make payments on those loans even though they're not due until after you graduate. While they aren't accruing high interest, now is the time to just hack away at them a little bit at a time. Another bonus about returning to school during a life shift is that once you start to get some of the course material in, many colleges offer work-study or paid apprentice positions. This will give you experience in a related field, which can help you get hired in your dream job. A rock-bottom situation may be a wonderful opportunity to return to school. Take up that career you've always wanted to pursue and use that increased income to pay off any high-interest debts and build your credit score. Then enjoy the gift of a new training and career, which may be the best part of whatever caused you to return to school. These days, entire industries can shift in an instant, so going back to school at any age is not uncommon. Feel free to use this affirmation that I shared with Judy before promising to attend her graduation from flight attendant school someday as well. I am a lifelong learner and a wisdom earner. Volunteering. Sometimes our career shifts start as unpaid opportunities. When considering what you want to do next, you might want to think of what you'd be happy doing without even getting paid, and then go do that. Get started volunteering. If you really want to work with animals, that might mean volunteering at the animal shelter. If you want to write, you might volunteer to write for a nonprofit. You're going to do that, and the people who may be able to give you a position in the career that you love will see you. When you're out there giving back in contribution, they see how you connect with everybody and think, I need someone like that. I wonder if she'd be interested in a job. The next thing you know, you're doing what you want to do. They'll see that you're not even getting paid to do this little part-time gig and understand that it's something you would love to do even if they paid you nothing. But you're never going to get that opportunity if you're just sitting and doing the job that doesn't fit and then going home and feeling sorry about it. Instead, focus on what you truly want to be doing, what you love and care about and are good at, no matter how much or if it pays. The jobs I told you about in the introduction, working for JPL and the phone company while I was building up my stores, were the last time I applied for a job. That's not to say I haven't worked, though. I was given positions I never applied for because I volunteered first and they saw who I am. The next thing you know, I got the position. I've received great opportunities that led to high-paid positions as a teacher and consultant because I volunteered. I am very passionate about equal education for all children in the United States, and I campaigned on that for many years. I have 6 kids, and I love them all, and they deserve to have fair and equal education. I campaigned for 20 years and made some big changes in the state legislation. During that time, I volunteered and was hired as a scheduler for an assemblyman. Next thing you know, I became the campaign manager. All right, if you are just tuning in, this is Sheila Mack, host of NBC's Sheila Mack Show here on KCAA Radio, the station that leaves no listener behind. And one of the things we did mention during our talk today is there is a special resource that not a lot of people know about. It is the 211 resource. So if you Google 211 or call 211 in your state or province in Canada, you will find a lot of help for friends, family, or if you need help yourself. 211 is a free and confidential service that helps people across North America find the local resources they need. They are there to help you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So keep that in mind. Things that they can help with are food resources, mental health, healthcare, housing, transportation, income, utility assistance, and much more. Also offer, I do have Mastermind live weekly courses, and those are available at SheilaMack.com, SheilaMac.com. I have to let you know something, just between you and me. This book is not one size fits all, just like a pair of boots or a bra. So the formula is designed to help you through any situation. For you to grab a copy of my new best-selling book, Bootstraps and Bra Straps, the formula to go from rock bottom back into action in any situation. It is now available on Audible as well as on Amazon and Kindle and at www.sheilamac.com.